A dog barks when his master is attacked. I would be a coward if I saw that God's truth is attacked and yet would remain silent. John Calvin.
Get in a long tube with a bunch of demons.
Do you really believe that human beings are demons?
No, I do not. And don't you ever say I did.
This is my Bible. I am what it says I am.
There's probably a balance between, I believe you have to know Christ, but
God is in hell. He is. And someone knows this for sure.
all of mankind is going to end up somewhere in heaven.
My mission really is to just help people of faith, especially, to re-examine this issue, to realise the church has got things wrong in the past.
For those who are God's by faith in His Son.
Corinthians, right? 2 Corinthians 3:7.
Victory in the name which is above every name.
There's no exception for rape or incest. It's an extreme law. And
right now, bones, ligaments, tendons, in Jesus' name. Get out here right now.
So put your trust in the sovereign risen king, who doesn't owe you one cotton picket thing. And yet he still promises to furnish his disciples, but we take what he's created and we turn him into idols. I'll never back down, so how can I keep it in? But you'll never see me preaching the sin of TBM. Yeah, spirit and truth is worship viewed in this chemistry, but some are spewing distorted views of the Trinity. With the enemy there, lies have been bought. Whether you like it or not, you will either get shot. No reverence from these reverends, only pathetic benevolence who claims to heal without a shred of medical evidence. They in the public side, lukewarmer than kitchens. On live television saying Mormons are Christians. I'm not throwing stones, I'm simply shouting the truth. So if you never knew, now you're without an excuse. If you still wanna play with them cards, then let's run them. Cause even Satan speaks to others like Jeff Dunham. So who are you with? Denied a gray area. Don't make another preacher lie when they bury ya.
If you're going to heaven and you know you ain't got no sin in your life, it's time to die.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to The Master's Dog, False Teacher of the Week, episode number 8. I am your host, the Evangelical Norm. So the whole premise of doing the False Teacher of the Week was so some people who had seen the intro video for this podcast, if you're listening online, you don't know that there's an intro video, but there's a whole string of false teachers. You can hear some of them talking before Result kicks in with the verse of the song and during the instrumental intro. So you can hear some of the false teachers that are talking. It's beginning to end, it is false teachers throughout this video. So somebody had said to me, one of the ladies at our church said she didn't really know everybody in there or understand why they were false teachers. So I decided to do the False Teacher of the Week to just break down that video, and then we'll go beyond it after I finish with those in the video, because there are a lot of false teachers that are out there that aren't in that video. So every week, every Saturday morning, I drop the episode of the False Teacher of the Week, starting just from beginning to end of that video, and then we'll move on from there. I'll even take suggestions. If there's any false teacher you want me to talk about, shoot me an email at theevangelicalnorm@gmail.com, or you can comment in any of the videos, hit me up on Facebook, Twitter, somewhere. Let me know what false teacher you'd like me to do an episode on. So this week we are episode number 8. We are talking about, and this is a kind of a tough one because this guy, I know Shawn McCraney. We're talking about Shawn McCraney. Don't know him really, really well, but we've had many conversations in many different times that we've met in different circumstances. I was interviewed for his TV show, went in and watched a live taping of the TV show one time with my wife, interviewed with Bishop Earl for his Ex-Mormon Files, which was a show that Shawn had influenced and helped create. Went to many different events, watched baptisms, stuff like that was done. And so Shawn influenced me quite a bit because when I moved out from Colorado back to Utah as part of the Vineyard movement, I still qualified to be a false teacher in one of these episodes. And so we got out here to plant a Vineyard church, and we started watching Heart of the Matter. And it was on at, I want to say like 9 o'clock on, I can't remember what night of the week, but it may have been on every night of the week at 9 o'clock. But he was on, and then right after him he wasn't on every night. It was once a week that he was on. But right afterwards was Wretched TV. And Wretched TV was on every night of the week, I believe. So we would watch, my wife and I would sit down, we would watch Shawn, and then we would watch Wretched. And that was what led me down the road to Reformed theology. Got me out of the Vineyard movement, got me into... And Shawn also was instrumental in the church that we finally landed in after we left the Vineyard movement. So, we had kind of church hopped and been looking around at churches here in Ogden. Went to Genesis Project, a couple others that I'm ashamed to even say we stepped foot in. Okay, really only one. There are some good churches in Ogden, just not one that we had fit with. We went to Integrity Christian Fellowship, which was a little more Pentecostal than what I wanted, but it was expository preaching and so on. We'd been to Crossroads. We'd been to another Foursquare church here in town. And so we were watching Heart of the Matter one week, and Shawn mentioned that he was going to be speaking at Refuge Church. It was doing a Saturday night thing, so we were like, "Ooh, we should check out this Refuge Church." And so the next Sunday, which was Easter Sunday, Talia and I are talking about where we're going to go to church, and she's like, "Where are we going to go to church today?" And this has been a point of contention for a little while because we just couldn't find a church that we were happy with. We couldn't find a church that I was happy with. We'll put it that way. There were no churches that I was like, this is just doctrinally sound, I'm good with it, kind of thing. And so having seen that Shawn was going to speak at Refuge, we decided we wanted to go check out Refuge on Easter. And so amazing. Kellen, the founding pastor of Refuge Church, Kellen Criswell, got up there, he preached, we heard the gospel. They had 5 people scheduled to be baptized that day. They baptized 22. We just knew that we were home, and we've been members of Refuge ever since then, going on 10 years now that we've been at Refuge Church, and continuing down the path of Reformed theology as well with Refuge, as Refuge has traveled along that path. I was a little further along when we started. They caught up and maybe a little bit ahead of me on the path of Reformed theology. But we're not talking about Refuge. We're talking about Shawn McCraney. So Shawn was pretty instrumental in helping me get out of false teaching, out of a movement that just really is questionable at this point, not theologically sound. And it was really because we had been watching Shawn's show and led us to Wretched, and then of course Wretched led us to so many other things. Doug Wilson, James White, I think I found Apologia aside from Wretched, but Ray Comfort, of course, and many other, Vodi Balcom, you name it. So Wretched led us to all those things. So Shawn was a pretty solid guy at the time. He was, I think he was attending and may have been ordained through the Calvary Chapel, which Refuge was a Calvary Chapel. He was going to Calvary Chapel, Salt Lake under Terry Long. Had started a basically kind of a Bible study home church group called C.A.M.P.U.S, which I can't remember. Let me see if I've still got the page up here for C.A.M.P.U.S. Christian anarchists meeting to prayerfully understand Scripture. So there you go. He was heading in an interesting direction already at that point. but he had the show that I listened to when I was driving for Model Linen, and I was driving down to St. George once a week. I would listen to episode after episode after episode of Heart of the Matter, and then I would listen to some episodes of Wretched as well. But I went through in, I don't know how many weeks it took me of driving down there, but I caught up on over 3 years of the Heart of the Matter that Shawn had this show and taught. And really, some really good stuff. And I loved the telephone stuff where Mormons would call in and they'd go back and forth and stuff like that. And he tried so hard to maintain his composure, and sometimes he'd get off the track. So real solid initially for the for a long time. And then he just kind of started to go off track. And this is, and I don't know if he was out of Calvary Chapel at that time, or if he just wasn't receiving the accountability and the oversight from that Calvary that he should have. But Shawn is a great example of what happens when pastors have no authority over them, either aren't governed by a plurality of elders where there are equal members, which is what Refuge looks like, or don't have any pastors over them, and just don't have the oversight necessary. And that's the situation that Shawn found himself in. And then he just really went off the rails. He started. So he took a break from the show for a minute, and then he came back, and he wasn't so much focused on Mormons. He had been going to other Christian churches around the city, Salt Lake City, Utah area. Wasn't happy with what he was seeing. He initially started going off on mega churches, which, of course, I didn't have an issue with at all, because I mean he was focusing on Joel Osteen, and I think he talked about Creflo Dollar and Kenneth Copeland and stuff like that. But then he started to hit smaller local churches and just nitpicky stuff. But then it was like he was completely coming against Calvinism, and his point of contention was with the doctrine of election, which kind of led down a path of he kind of abandoned the traditional Christian teaching about hell and embraced a sort of universalism. Now he's getting into heresy-land. He's literally becoming a heretic at this point. Ultimately, he got to a place where he denies the Trinity, that he would say, and there are episodes of his show that you can go back and find. I don't know them exactly, but he would say that that before Christ came, God was just God. There was just God the Father until Christ came, and then there became, and it's like this weird sort of modalism in the Trinity. And so he is now a man who is a heretic, firmly ensconced in heresy land. He is there's no getting around the fact. I mean, just embracing any sort of universalism, which it almost feels like it's leading him back around. I would not be surprised if he ends up somehow back in Mormonism or one form of it or another. But at this point, he's basically trying to get off and, follow in the footsteps of Joseph Smith and really just kind of form his own religion. But he's absolutely denying the doctrine of the Trinity. He denies any kind of doctrine of hell and embraces a weird form of universalism in that. And I do believe he's still doing the show Heart of the Matter. I just can't bring myself to watch it. I mean, it's like there's a few guys that I've had in my life who were mentors, and it wasn't so that we had such a personal relationship. Again, there was a minute there where he could recognize me and go, oh, okay, that's Norm. He wouldn't know me from Adam now. It's been years, and there's been no attempt to engage with one another in any way, shape, or form. Once this video comes out, he'll probably know who I am. But I've had many mentors, and I kind of did consider him a mentor. He really did, and I kind of went on about it already, and we no need to rehash that, but really was instrumental in providing. God used him. Well, that's the accurate terminology, because it wasn't so much what he did, as it was God used his position in the TV lineup to get me into watching Wretched, which got me into listening to Wretched Radio, which introduced me to a whole world of Reformed theology. Steve Lawson, Paul Washer, Matt Chandler, John MacArthur, Voddie Baucham, you name it, all the guys that, Doug Wilson and so on, all that. And so God used him, and to watch this guy that God used so instrumentally in encouraging me to with teaching on Mormonism and leading me through those means to Reformed theology, to watch that man turn to a heretic. Very painful, very hard. And so I've tried to watch a couple episodes, even just to, this week, knowing that it was coming up, I tried to pull up some stuff on YouTube just to watch it. And it's so hard, watching the old kind of solid, and maybe he was never firmly solid, but at least it wasn't heretical teaching of Shawn McCraney back at the beginning in 2000, what was it, 2001, no, not that far back. We didn't come out here till 2008. So like 2009, 2010, to see that. I mean, he got saved, came out of Mormonism. I can't say that he was actually saved, because where he is right now is not in a position of salvation. I would not say that he is a saved Christian. But he came out of Mormonism in 97, stayed in Mormonism for a few years before he was excommunicated, and then he wrote the book Born Again Mormon and so on. So to go back and look at some of those early videos of his, to see just how good a teacher he was, and really he had some good information, and then to go watch him go completely off the rails like it did, pretty hard to watch. But again, it's a lesson for those of us. Praise God that I am, submitted to elders in my church. As an elder, I was accountable to those men. There's never been a time since I've started this podcast or since I've been in refuge where I have not felt like I did not have the authority over me, where I could just go off the rails. I have guys that are willing to come to me and blatantly say, you're wrong. And I mean, I've had it happen, not theology-wise, but in areas of politics and so on. I've had elders who have come and said, you might want to tone down some of the political things you're saying, and so on. So gratefully, but Shawn is really an example of what happens to a pastor who does not have that. They are so likely to go off the rails, either whether they go so far to the point that you can call them a heretic, or just drifting off into the weeds of false teaching. If you consider yourself a teacher, if you consider yourself a preacher in any way, whether that's as a pastor, an evangelist, an apologist, if you consider yourself one of those things and you don't have men around you who are willing to keep you in check, you run the risk of going the way that Shawn McCraney did, and literally could end up finding yourself deeply entrenched in heresy. And that's a scary thought. So if you are in any of those categories and you don't have authority over you, find authority. Get somebody who will stand with you and go, I will help keep you in check. Help keep each other in check. But get into a local church where you have a pastor that you can submit to. If you're not in a local church and you're teaching or doing anything, you're wrong. Seriously. That's part of where Shawn went wrong. So there you go. There's our False Teacher of the Week, episode 8, Shawn McCraney. I hope it was helpful to you guys. I hope enough of that was an encouragement to keep you on the track. And so, as always, preach the gospel at all times. Use words. They're necessary. Until next week, Soli Deo Gloria.